Hi guys, welcome to the channel. This video is part 1 of a character modeling series. In today's video we are going to block out and do some rough sculpting of our character's head to end up with something like this. The character will be a sort of stylized warrior, I imagine, but we'll see where the winds of our imagination take us. Before we start, I'd just like to mention I do make use of a built-in Blender add-on called Add Mesh Extra Objects. This gives the rounded cube and single vertex options under the Add Mesh menu. These are very helpful in sculpting and modeling in general. You can enable this up in the Edit Preferences menu if you haven't already. I also have Align to View for new objects under the Editing menu enabled. This is set to World by default, I believe. This is just a personal preference of mine. Don't forget to click Save Preferences before closing out if you make any changes. I have prepared 3 blueprint images to help with this stage if you want to use them to follow along. There's a front, a side, and an arm. Link to the Dropbox folder is below. Okay, so getting started. 1 on the numpad for front view, Shift A and add the front reference image. Then 3 on the numpad to go to side view, and then add in the side profile reference images. One has the body and the other just the arm, so you can see the silhouettes better. Then you can move them out of the way like this. You can change the transparency of the images by clicking here. I'm going to reduce it down a bit. You can also change the visibility of the image by changing the side option to front or back. This can make it easier to see things in alternate orthographic views, or if you are just orbiting around. You can also change whether the image appears in perspective, orthographic, or both. These options can be handy when you have many reference images from multiple angles. Okay, so let's get started with the blockout. Shift A to add a rounded cube. I'm going to change the radius to 1 and then the arc divisions to 16 for a little bit better malleability and control when sculpting. Now you can Control Tab into Sculpt mode. Here I'm selecting the Elastic Deform brush to start forming the rough shape of the head. You can also use the grab brush if you prefer. It should be on by default, but make sure you have the sculpting symmetry on up here. You can see here the blueprint is a little bit off, so I'm just going to pull it back a little bit to line up with the sphere I have already. Now over on the right layer panel, I'm going to toggle off the select and render options for the reference images. This will make it so that you can't accidentally select the reference images in the viewport, and also make it so that the images do not appear in the final render. There's a filter menu up behind my super cool logo that you can click on to make these toggles visible here. More pushing and pulling with the deform brush to form the shape of the skull. Once I'm done with that, Shift D to duplicate the head mesh, and we're going to use it to create the jaw. I do a lot of duplication of objects to save on a little bit of time here in this stage. Now moving on to the neck, I'm going to press 7 on my numpad to go to top view, then Shift A to add a rounded cube. But this time I'm going to use an operator preset called Capsule. You can see it creates a longer pill shape, which is perfect for what we need. As a quick aside, I do have a free external third-party add-on installed called Machine Tools. This is available on Gumroad. I'll put a link in the description below. It basically just changes your pie menus a bit for better efficiency. Pressing Alt-Z allows you to toggle the X-ray mode quickly, as you can see. I use this shortcut a lot. I then select all the bottom vertices and move them up a bit, as I don't need the neck to be quite this long. Then I'll rotate it into place by pressing R. Now onto the ear. 3 on the numpad for side view. I'm going to Shift A and add a cylinder. It's a little bit thick for the ear, so I'm going to tab into edit mode and then press S to scale, then X to constrain to the X axis, and then move it inwards a bit. Now I'm going to go over to the modifier panel on the right, and I'm going to add in a mirror modifier. It looks a little weird at first since our object's origin is in the middle of the cylinder. To have it mirror over to the other side of the head, you can press Ctrl A and select Clear Transforms. This will reset the object's origin to the middle of the space, which is also the point at which the object will mirror over. Okay, so now onto the eye. Create a UV sphere this time. Tab into edit mode. Select the middle vertex and Alt-Shift select the first loop, and then press O on your keyboard to activate proportional editing. Or you can just press up here. Then with the scroll wheel on your mouse, you can change the area of influence so that when you press G to move your selection, the third loop doesn't move. Now you can press X and select Delete Vertices. Now Alt-left click the first loop again, and then press E and then Y to extrude back along the Y axis, and then F to create a face. Then I'm going to shade smooth, and then add a subdivision surface modifier. Then tab back into edit mode, Alt-left click the third loop, and press Ctrl B to add a bevel. You can play with the offset and segments to get the desired look. Here I go with 2 segments. Then Alt-left click the inner loop and press Shift R to repeat the last operation you performed, and in this case it's the bevel. This can help ensure that you have consistent bevels. Okay, so the 3D cursor is down at the origin point by default. New objects are created at wherever the 3D cursor is. To move the 3D cursor to where the eyeball is, select the eyeball and then press Shift S and select 2 selected. Now when you Shift A and add a rounded cube, it will be directly in line with the eyeball. I'm going to scale it up to just be a little bit bigger than the eyeball we just created. I'm going to tab into edit mode, turn on proportional editing, pull out this one vertex here at the end and create a subtle football shape for a touch of realism. Then selecting Shade Smooth and adding a Subdivision Surface modifier. Shift A to add in another rounded cube. I'm going to use this to form the eyelids. Tabbing into edit mode, Alt-left click the middle loop, then X to delete. Turn off proportional editing here, then Alt-left click the loop here. Then press S and then Z to scale along the Z axis. You can hold Control to incrementally scale until the scale field up in the top left corner reaches 0. Then repeat for the bottom. Now press F to create a face, I to inset, and then Shift R to repeat the inset operation a few times. Then you can repeat for the top. Pressing L to select all linked vertices on the top. I'm then going to press H to hide them. Now I'm going to select this edge loop here, and with proportional editing on, I'm going to move it down so that the eyelid shape is something like this. Alt H to unhide, and then I'll repeat these steps for the top eyelid. Just to better illustrate how the select linked function works, if I move the top eyelid down like this, overlapping the bottom one, and I press L on one vertex, it will only select the other vertices that are directly linked with it, and not the others that are associated with the top eyelid. This is a handy way of selecting objects quickly sometimes. Okay, so now moving and rotating the eyelids into place. Now I'm going to select these loops here and pull them in to get a better shape on the eyelid. Shade Smooth and Subdivision Surface Modifier again. And then I'm going to add in a little bevel on the edge of the eyelids with Control B. Now let's select all the eye components and move them into place. With them all selected still, I'm going to Control A and clear transforms. And then over on the right, I'm going to add a mirror modifier. Now this will only add a mirror modifier to the last selected object. To have it add to the rest of the selected items, you can press Control L and then select modifiers. Now all components of the eye have the mirror modifier as well. Now for the nose and eyebrows. The nose, I'll just Shift D to duplicate the head. For the eyebrows, I'm going to add in a rounded cube with a radius of 0.5 to get a more squared, stylized look, and then move them into place like this. Now I'm going to start sculpting in some refinements to the shape. Using the grab brush, I'm going to start shaping some eye sockets a little bit. I'm also going to shape the eyebrows a little bit more. You can see the eyebrows are quite squared off. To get more sculpting control, you can tab into edit mode and Control R to add in some more control loops. Then it's just more shaping. To get some more definition on the cheeks, you can select the clay strips brush, and then by holding Control, you can invert the brush such that it digs a little bit rather than adds to it as it normally would. Holding Control with any brush inverts it, which is a very handy shortcut. You can see with the same brush, when I don't press Control while using it, it creates a little hill rather than a hole. Okay, now let's join the objects and then smooth everything. Before we do though, make sure to apply the mirror modifiers first on the ears and eyebrows. I'm going to shift select all of the objects except the eyelids, which I like to leave until the end. Then press Ctrl J to join them all. Now they are all one piece. Shout out to Henry Grimes, who in the comments of another video tipped me off to this method. No more Bool tool for me. Now Control Tab into Sculpt mode. I'm going to go up to the Voxel Remesh menu and press the Remesh button. This will retopologize your object with uniform topology at a given resolution, which is determined by the voxel size field. You can see here at a voxel size of 0.1, the resolution is a little low, you could say. So I'm going to undo and then lower the voxel size until I get something where I don't lose too much detail and still keep my poly count relatively low. 0.05 is still too low of a resolution, as you can see, so I'm going to use the eyedropper to test the current voxel size and then round the number off. Here I settle on something like 0.08. If you are in version 2.9, you can also press Shift R to set the voxel size. A white grid will pop up and you can adjust the voxel size that way as well. You can also press Ctrl R to remesh the same object anytime. Now that everything is joined, we can start smoothing out these artifacts and clean up the mesh a little bit, and start also roughing in some details. I like to use the inverted sculpt draw brush to dig out the holes like the nostrils, inner eye corner, and ears. Here I'm inverting the crease brush by holding Control to get a sharp sort of pinched line, which is great for the stylized look. There's also the pinch brush, which can give a similar effect. Now I'm going to make a hole for the mouth by pressing M for the mask tool. Then I'm going to increase the strength to 1 and change the fall off to constant. This gives a hard-edged mask. Now I'll paint a hole for the mouth. And then press Ctrl I to invert this mask. The black part of the mask will be unaffected by your brush. Now, I'm just going to use the deform brush to pull an opening for the mouth back. Alt M to clear the mask, and then I'm going to press Ctrl R to voxel remesh the object again, and give some more topology to the stretched out mouth area. Now I'm going to hold shift to smooth everything and then make some adjustments to the eye and then dig out the mouth a little bit more. Now onto the teeth and tongue. For the teeth, just a rounded cube with a radius of 0.2. Then I'm going to scale it into the shape that I want. You can press B and then middle mouse button to box deselect objects or vertices. To create the bottom teeth, I'm going to Shift D to duplicate them in edit mode, and then press S and then Z to constrain. Then I'm going to enter -1 in the Z axis of the scale field that pops up in the bottom left. This effectively flips the teeth. Making a tongue now, just a rounded cube with some control loops and sculpted into the rough shape. You can see the bottom teeth look a little darker than the top, which is due to the normals being flipped during the scale operation we just did. You may want to select them and press Shift N to recalculate the normals such that they point outwards. This will have importance when it comes to texturing later. Anyway, that's it for today. Hopefully you have a rough sculpt of a head for your character like this. We will add in some more detail in a later video. In the next video, we will block out and rough sculpt the body in a similar fashion. Hit me up on social media and show me your creation. I'd love to see what you guys are coming up with. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope it helped, and see you in the next one.